Thank you, Madone. Good afternoon, everyone. Last session of the day. Hope everybody's awake for this one. If not, we're going to keep you here forever. As Madone said, I'm David MacKenzie, owner and managing director of Pemberton Valley Lodge. And like many of you in the room, I'm not here as a commentator on this issue, I'm living it. Across British Columbia, what's happening in our downtown is no longer theoretical, it's operational. It's affecting how we staff our properties, how we welcome guests, how we manage risk, and in some cases, whether business can continue to operate at all. We spent the last few years talking about the problem, rising crime, visible disorder, and the growing complexity around addiction, mental health, and enforcement. Today, we're going to shift that conversation. This panel is about what's actually working, what's not, and what needs to change quickly. Because if we're being honest, the status quo isn't acceptable for our employees, for our guests, or for the long-term health of our communities. The good news is there are people doing real work, making real progress, and pushing for real change. And that's who we brought here together today. First, Clint Mahlman, President and Chief Operating Officer of London Drugs and co-founder of Save Our Streets. Clint brings a frontline business perspective dealing directly with the realities of organized retail crime, while also leading one of the most visible business advocacy movements pushing for change in our downtown cores. Next, Colin Watson, Chief Constable of Abbotsford Police Department. Colin brings deep experience in policing and public safety with a clear-eyed view on resource pressures, enforcement challenges, and the role of accountability within the broader system. Jane Talbot is President and CEO of the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association. Jane and her team are at the center of one of Canada's most complex urban environments, working closely with businesses, including hotels, to coordinate real-time responses, advocate for change, and help restore confidence in the downtown core. And finally, Kelly Sundberg, founding president of the Safe Design Council and professor at Mount Royal University. Kelly brings a unique perspective on crime prevention through environmental design, focusing on how physical space, visibility, and layout can reduce risk and improve both real and perceived safety. Now let's get to it. We spent a lot of time over the last few years talking about the problem. I'd like to start with this. What's actually working right now in your world that's making a measurable difference? Who would like to start? Clint?
Well, sure. In terms of the impact, a lot of it is to try and communicate to the decision makers in all levels of responsible for the justice system, and a lot of time educating. And organized retail crime is a great example of that. It's just one aspect. We're trying to explain to people what it is, how pervasive it is, the solutions available to all parts of the justice system to help plug a significant gap. And also to remind them that this isn't just about businesses complaining. As a compassionate, caring, dignified society, organized crime is taking advantage of those that have mental health, addiction, and brain injury from their addiction disorders. And and that's the horrific side of organized retail crime. They're often cooperating these people. So what is working is trying to get that education through, because through that education and defining the problem, there's very clear potential solutions, and that's what we've been spending a lot of time doing.
Someone else?
Sure, yeah. So, as you suggested, like over time, we've seen a real evolution of things that have worked, the things that had not worked. But one of the things that I've seen recently that I'm liking to see is, you mentioned it a minute ago, that sort of clear-eyed view of where we are in the whole public safety space. Taking a fresh look at that, what is the role of the criminal justice system? Where are the intersects with all of the other systems? I'm a firm believer that you siloing the criminal justice system or the healthcare system or any other of our systems independently is not going to help us solve the problem. So working through and trying to find those opportunities for collaboration, working together, trying to improve communication, streamline the processes that we follow are really going to take us a long way to try to close the gaps and solve some of the problems. help us clearly define the problems and challenges that are there, and then work backwards from those problems towards solutions, rather than trying to come up with a solution and sort of impose that in the real world, which rarely works.
And Jane?
Yeah, I would say that we really have had to change our narrative around safety in downtown Vancouver. It used to be that we didn't want to draw attention to the fact that there may be safety issues because we didn't want that to be the story. We're so far past that now, and we're really leaning into the issues, but more importantly, the solutions. And we believe that if we're going to solve any of this, we need to shine a light on it, and then we need to back it up with solutions. So that's working for us.
Kelly?
I've seen over the last few years quite an advancement in the science and research on security, in large part because of partnerships between industry that is facing a lot of issues and the law enforcement community that has limited resources. So it's been quite exciting to see how we can bring together criminologists, architects, landscape architects, and others to find engineered solutions or process solutions. And for our group, we started a not-for-profit because we saw that this was a big issue where there's no consistency, and it's a very difficult discussion. People don't like to talk about security. So we found if you have an accreditation, a certification, it takes the argument out of it, but it's the partnership that I think it's been, and that's probably only the last 10 years.
Okay, great. Great opening. Jane, I'll start with you. You've been working directly with hotels. What are operators in this room missing that could make an immediate impact?
Well, I hesitate to tell you what you're missing because I see you as the experts in your world. But let me tell you what we're doing, and maybe some of it will resonate. So we work closely with our hotels, and we're continuing to strengthen that relationship. One of the things that we do that may translate is called Operation Cooperation. It started in probably like 20 years ago, but somebody with passion picked it back up in 2018. And what it does is bring security professionals, hotels, storefronts, BIAs, VPD, together, and every month there's a meeting and there is an issue that's identified that is that resonates for everyone, and an expert speaker is brought in to talk about how do we deal with this. So some of the recent examples would be fraud. What is it? Sorry, when the money is fake. You're a cop.
When it's fake?
Yeah, when it's fake, counterfeit money,
yes.
right? And how to identify it. And then in your world, it would be how to maintain a structure that does not bring in theft. And it really does work. And it's resulted in one of the hotels, the Fairmont, serving on the board of that organization because it does work so well. So maybe that will work in your community.
Great, thank you. Colin? There's still a strong perception among businesses that reporting doesn't lead to action. What would you say to hoteliers in the room that have stopped reporting incidents?
Please don't stop reporting incidents at the most basic level. In all seriousness, I recognize that all of you are trying to operate businesses, and just a few minutes of everyday staff time, that's an investment in time. There's an opportunity cost to that. And if you're not seeing that return on investment, you kind of wonder, hey, is this worth it? As a law enforcement professional, I've been in this business for almost 30 years. Every year, that data, that information is becoming increasingly more important on a couple of different fronts. One is on an operational level. We rely heavily on that information coming in. If we don't get the reports, and I mean, the quantitative data is useful. Understanding the nuances behind each individual case is also critical for us. So to understand what's happening helps us make operational decisions about where we're assigning resources and what that looks like. Also on the other side of it, the more on the economic side, is when we're having conversations with local government, public safety is not inexpensive, we all know that. When they hear stories about what's happening in the community, the first thing they do is ask us for the data. When the data doesn't match the story, that weakens the argument. It makes it really difficult. So when we're looking for legislative change, when we're looking for resourcing decisions around the public safety space, that data becomes increasingly important for us to have and ultimately rely on in making some of these evidence-informed decisions over time.
Great. Thank you. That is quite important, because I know in my own community, everybody stopped calling, and they announced this year that property crime was down. So data. Kelly, you focus on design as a crime prevention tool. What are the most common mistakes you see in hotels or commercial properties?
You know, as I was saying, as the science of security evolves, a lot of that is because for the longest time, security has been more sales of cameras and alarms. The most important thing you can have is a security plan, having someone who helps you put that together, looking at how you have systems in place so that you have educated and aware staff, and having a standard applied. So that's what our not-for-profit does, is we work on developing a certification. Just like you have LEED or WELL or some of the other standards, it's the same idea, only it denotes that you've taken the steps to ensure that your staff, your guests, and your owners are safe and secure. The key on that, but part of what we believe in that is we can't trust the data. Not because the police don't want to give the data, but because people aren't reporting it to the police. And then you get people like myself who go and say, why aren't you releasing the data? And you're like, I don't have any because no one's reporting. I know that there's a mismatch. So we actually include the importance of reporting and recording, even if you're not having those incidents, and then encouraging connection with the insurance company and say, hey, we're doing everything we can. But it saves you in the long run from unfortunate lawsuits and the duty that many of you may have if you have unionized staff with grievances in occupational health and safety. But it's tough out there.
Thank you. Clint, from a frontline business perspective, what does organized retail crime actually look like day to day, and how has it changed?
Sure. So organized crime, there's lots of different definitions, but a lot of it is intuitive. It's individuals coming together, generally to instruct someone else to commit a crime on their behalf. And that crime, whether in retail, it's often almost exclusively physical goods that are then resold for a profit. Today, what is the best boon for retail organized crime groups are two things. One is legislative, and the other is what everyone's on phone. So social media, a marketplace that is in there. Most organized crime that we experience today have pre-orders, just like you would sell your rooms in advance. They'll have pre-orders of whatever it is that they think they can sell. Lots of different criteria for that. What is, as I mentioned, is insidious is in many cases, it's not a common criminal. They will go out and co-opt those with mental health, addiction, previous criminal records, the disadvantaged in society to commit that crime, and then have them somehow get those goods. Either often they don't want to touch it, so it's organized in that way. The other part is the legislative issue that Canada is far behind on. So in the US, they created, to help break this, what's called the Inform Act, which basically said that after a certain amount of sales on certain social media platforms or marketplaces, like an Amazon, that you had to disclose your ID. And according to some stats, the combination of disclosure of your ID and who is the beneficial owner of that, it cut as much as 50% of crime that was happening. There's other acts at the levels of, I would say California is the leader that we're aware of, and they have specific criminal code charges around organized retail crime that is a separate instance, and it's seen on top of, it's not included. In Canada, Organized Retail Crime Bill C-14 that we're all hearing about, it's only a sentencing condition as it's written today, and we've been advocating that it should be a specific charge condition.
So I guess that kind of segues into my next question.
Okay.
For you then, since you kind of brought it up, because you've been very vocal on legislative gaps, so if there was the one thing that you could fix federally or provincially in law tomorrow, what would it be?
Yeah, I would call it a nesting or a Russian doll of issues that all integrate together. So the first of all is, as I've said, specific criminal code provisions for organized retail crime that is nested with marketplace conditions that require the monitoring and reporting of criminal activity. And those are huge, but all of this also has to have specific resources put to it. We've heard from, I was presenting several weeks ago in Ottawa, and what we heard is we actually believe that the provinces have everything they need. We need the provinces to step up and actually fund the Crown prosecutors and fund the judges and fund those that are responsible. Because the federal government can only, of course, create the legislation. So those very specific nesting of issues of putting a hole in organized retail crime to make sure that the marketplaces where they dispose of retail crime and the resources, and I have to include the continuum of care for those that are disadvantaged in society that are co-opted to often create these instances.
Great, thank you for that. Jane, BIAs have had to evolve quickly into public safety leaders. What are you doing today that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago?
How much time do you have? I could talk about this all night. Well, we're still doing the same things that we were doing 5 or 6 years ago, but we have now had to become experts in mental health, addiction, support services, housing, and we have really we've taken a different path down towards advocacy. So for example, a couple of years ago, we launched a campaign called Better Safe Than Sorry, and it was in advance of the provincial election, and it was calling on all parties to prioritize safety. We are a nonpartisan organization, so we can't be perceived as supporting any one group, so we really had to walk that line. I didn't think we went far enough, but when it hit the media, it was an unprecedented move by a BIA, and the slant really was about how BIAs were stepping outside of their zone and creating a new path, and that's because we have to do that. So yeah, we're still doing all of the beautification and the events and the economic development, but we're also front and center on mental health, addiction, and safety, and it's just where we're at.
Okay, and Colin, for you, where are policing resources most stretched right now, and what trade-offs are being made that the public may not see?
Yeah, that's another one. How much time do you have? I think this manifests itself differently in each community. What the crime picture looks like in Victoria or Vancouver is going to look a little bit different than Abbotsford or smaller communities. But one thing is for sure, policing public safety is both expensive and we have limited resources. We don't have, I promise you, that we don't have anyone sitting around waiting for something to do. So when a new crime problem evolves, we now have to reprioritize. And so those things that have the highest priority end up occupying a tremendous amount of our resources. As an example, in Abbotsford, in the tail end of 2023, we had the beginning of extortion-related violence that started, then ultimately spread throughout Abbotsford and then into Surrey and other communities. Again, we had no one sitting around waiting for something to do, so we have to reprioritize. So then what ends up happening is we have to try to figure out what's going to where we're going to invest the limited resources that we have in the most impactful way. And obviously, we're going to be focusing those things that have components of violence, particularly when it's gang or firearms violence. So That's one example from our community. Those examples are going to look different in each one of those communities. So, as we go along, we're going to have to continue to have these very, purposeful conversations about what are the public safety resources needed for the future? What are the legislative changes that are needed for the future to be able to best utilize the limited public safety resources that we do have? Because our officers do spend an awful lot of time on a lot of very, very time-consuming, paperwork and investigative roadblocks because our legislative landscape has not kept up to the realities of modern crime.
Kelly, if I gave every hotelier here a modest budget, I was going to say $1,000 earlier, but Foxful, you've kind of blown that, so I'm going to have to up the game here a little bit. So if you gave every hotelier a modest budget of, let's say, $15,000, what should they invest in first to improve safety?
Wow, how much time do you have exactly? 23 minutes and 56 seconds. Coming together through associations like this, and in other communities, associations like Jane, I think that when we have, and that's a way to go. Look, that's the way to go.
Thank you.
When we have security coming into the forefront of associations, that members are dealing with crime, and they can coordinate these efforts, then working with the police, it makes it a lot easier if they have one point of contact for the hotels or the downtown area. If you can have one point of contact. Two, you get the information and data and documentation so that you can go to your elected officials, you can go to your city council and say, here's the problem. Pemberton's crime rate going down, but it's not. So having that in your own hands. The other thing is, and it's very inexpensive, talking with your staff. In achieving optimum security, it's around the notion of stewardship. Kelson and Felt, you probably heard of broken windows theory. This notion that if we keep things clean and fix things that are broken, and we show stewardship and ownership both within the physical realm, and I didn't answer your question before, but it's to have security in a nice looking way. You don't need to make it look like Fort Knox. Make it look nice. But when you have your staff that's aware, it takes away the fear. It gives them an opportunity to be prepared, and they understand the protocol, and should something happen, you know that you're going to have a better outcome than if you didn't do that. But I really do think it starts with associations coming together. I think instead of doing it as individuals with your 15 grand each, pool it together and bring it to your associations wherever they are. I don't know if I started a fight between Jane's and the BC Hotel Association, but you can do it together. You can do it together.
That's great advice, great advice. So, Clint, the Save Our Streets Coalition that you are a co-founder of has been effective at mobilizing business voices. What separates effective advocacy from just noise?
Yeah. Well, I'll get everyone in the room to put their manager, owner, leader hat on. If your food and beverage manager, your front desk manager always came to you with problems, what is the likelihood that you're enthusiastic to open up that email or let them in? You have to understand whether it be a politician, police service, a Crown prosecution service, the federal government, the provincial. What is their agenda? What's important to them? And you have to weave your advocacy in to tie that, because if it's butting up against it, you're not going to get anywhere. The other part is to listen and inform, not complain. And so one of the things that SOS, we're very adamant about it, is we're not political, we're nonpartisan, we're not for charity, so we're not out asking for money, and that eliminates a worry right away. And the biggest thing is we're solution focused. We want to talk to the people that are decision makers that can help solve this. The solutions are there, the resources are there, they just need to be redeployed in a way that makes more sense. And through that listening, we reflect back to them saying, here's a solution. And we try and arm, especially the decision makers, the politicians, will do surveys that give them the wings to make bold decisions. that they otherwise. Incarcerated care would be an example where we did a survey, and an overwhelming percentage of British Columbians supported it. All of a sudden, I'm not advocating for that solution, but eyes started to open up, educating them about organized retail crime, helping them understand that all the issues there, so they are informed to make decisions. So the key is to listen, know the who you're trying to advocate their agenda, provide them solutions so they look good, and then if they feel that you really have their best interests at heart, and of course this means you've got to come across in a genuine way, then they're prepared to support you in what you're trying to do for the most part.
Thank you. Colin, from your perspective, what's the single biggest misconception businesses have about policing?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think oftentimes I find that people are surprised when they actually learn what the actual police resourcing is, and what's available to any community. Because as I mentioned, we're an expensive business or an expensive service to provide. So that is one of those things. The other thing is, I think I've talked to a number of business owners over my career, and I think for some folks, particularly when they've gone through that process, they've invested time and energy to make the reports, and they perceive at least that the police haven't come by, or that there's not, they don't care about it, or the problem is just too big. Folks like myself and my colleagues, particularly in the more senior positions, I mean, there's a lot of the stuff that keeps us up at night. So we do really care deeply about how to do this. And if any one of us had sort of the magic bullet or the magic formula, we'd be able to kind of solve this quite quickly. But this whole landscape, all these issues that are impacting hotels and businesses are very, very complex issues, and they're going to require complex solutions. So we are very, very invested in this work and in this space. But the policing component of it is only one component. The business is elected officials, all the different support systems are all part of it as well. So it's just going to need to be a continued work in progress. But know that the care and the desire is there, but we're working within strained and limited resources like everybody else is.
Thank you. So this could be for any of our panel members. There's a tension between compassion and accountability in this conversation. Are we striking the right balance right now?
Can I take that?
Go ahead, Jane.
I don't think there's anybody who is doing the work that we're doing who doesn't care about the people and who does not recognize that the people who most need the help are like, we're failing them. And when I say we, I'm not talking about the frontline workers. Here's my concern. The community is collectively losing empathy because we're not seeing the change that we need to see for the people, but also for the businesses. And as people ask for help and don't get it, and as businesses fail and workers don't want to come to work, there is a loss of empathy. And if we continue to lose that, we are going to have a whole other level of problems. And that is my concern. So yes, we should care about the people 100%, but we also need to care about our businesses. We need to care about how our downtowns feel. And we need to hold on to the fact that a strong community is strong business and strong people.
Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's troubled me over time is that we've gone through different cycles over the past many years, and one of the more troubling ones for me was because a lot of the things that they're impacting your businesses are behaviors, and some of those behaviors are rooted in addictions and mental health, co-occurring disorders, all those sorts of things. And so we've had this narrative going that, well, this is a health concern, or it's a housing issue, or it's this, or it's that, which just silos the issue. What I've come to, I'm speaking about this a lot recently, and you'll probably get tired of hearing me talk about this today, but more than one thing can be true at the same time. And what I mean by that is, it is, as to your point, we have a lot of people in our community that have needs. They're struggling with all those things that I mentioned. But what is also true is that those behaviors are causing people to feel unsafe. In some cases, actually be unsafe because of behaviors. We have a legal test that establishes when someone is not criminally responsible. So I'm not saying that the criminal justice system is the solution. I'm saying the criminal justice system is a big part of it, as is healthcare, as is all these other things. And that's why all those systems, all those processes need to work together and to try to find the best possible solution for that particular person in those behaviors, so that we can hopefully reduce and eliminate those. But as soon as we start thinking there's only one cause behind a set of behaviors, we kind of find ourselves in a lot of ways where we are now. Okay, well, that person's struggling with that addiction, so that in a way we're saying that's okay. I'm saying that's not okay. Two things can be true at the same time.
Great, thank you. Any others?
I think Colin hit it right on the head, is that we have a lot of crisis going on at the same time, and it's human nature to try and overly simplify a complicated issue. The solution is often by trying to simplify, but it's the continuum of care, it's the gaps in the care that happen. To go back to the source behavior of what's causing the mental health. How can we prevent that? What's leading to addiction? How can we prevent that? When someone's in that system, how do we support them? We don't kick them out of a treatment, a detox facility, because there's 26 days before they can get into a treatment far away from their home community where they don't have any support. And when they come out of treatment, they don't have a job, so they need to steal to eat. Those are things that other countries have solved a long time ago that we should be learning from.
Can I add one more thing? So our organization represents 8,000 businesses, and not a single time have I heard one person say that they didn't want people to receive help. Our businesses desperately want that, and together we're all going to have to work to address the interconnected challenges of housing affordability, mental health, addiction, and repeat offenders. Otherwise, we will be here next year having the same conversation.
I hope so, because it's nice here. I get asked this quite a bit. One of the things that I do is when I visit cities, I go and map the crime of the city myself and speak with those who are living on the streets. It's a very, very diverse population. But what I can say is the different jurisdictions, be it Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Vancouver, I have not mapped this town, I have Victoria. Whatever we've been doing, this is a problem that has persisted long enough where we see a daily death count. If we had a daily death count of kids getting hit in crosswalks, we would have every university on this planet figuring out how to make super crosswalks. We had a height of 9 people dying daily in the province of British Columbia. What has been tried is not working. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the death rate we see, which means this is not a political issue. This is a human issue where we must get together, think of the science and what is working. This cannot be done in silos, and it cannot be an industry that is surrounded by this devastating plight that is across our country. And as a criminologist who's been studying this for 20 years, it's only marginally getting better. And it is not the same in places like Helsinki, where they also have mental health, addiction, and crime issues. So we should take a hard look at why is it about our societies here that we're not seeing the same in other comparable jurisdictions. But whatever we're doing, it's not working. We need new solutions.
Okay, thank you for that. What is the one action that every hotel operator here can take in the next 30 days that will make a difference? We'll start with you, Kelly.
All right. extending your happy hour by about an hour. So 5 o'clock's a little unreasonable. Just push it to 6.
Will you talk to the liquor board for us?
I'm happy to sign. No, I think, the work that Clint's doing, and with there's been a number of associations and groups that have come together. I do a number of work, quite a bit of work in Ottawa, looking at how we testimony before Parliament. I was looking at bail, but the work that your group is doing with respect to retail crime, because Crown prosecutors are not going to charge anyone if it's under $1,000. You need to change the law. But the only way that law changes is if large associations and groups come together as a single, as a voice, and even partnering. And that has been, I would say that this is something that's quite new in our political culture. So it's important. Well done. I think it's great what you guys are doing.
Jane.
I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit on this, and I would say if you have not recently reached out to your BIA, please do. We fully understand the role and the importance of the visitor economy, and we know how important it is that a downtown and a community supports your business. We're here, we want to work with you, and we're open-minded. Like, talk to us about what you think will work, because that's the kind of conversations that we really want to have. So reach out to your BIAs.
Colin?
Well, there's been some really good suggestions from all the panelists here. I think if I was going to give one piece of advice, I'd suggest some of the most effective sort of strategies that I've seen have been like not only with the business associates, but even more on a micro level. Make friends with your neighbors, talk with them, like right on your block, because if you're having a problem, they're probably having the same problem. Help to really understand what the problem is. What are the behaviors? Who are the people? What are the times? All of those different things. Be on the same page in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable on your block. Talk about what things can be done to prevent those issues within your span of control, whether it's physical changes, whether it's talking with staff about consistent reporting through that whole block, all those types of things. And why that's important is I bet you'll probably see some improvement. And for those pieces that you can't improve on your own, when you reach out to your local police service and say, hey, this is what we're facing, it really, really helps us. It really helps our crime prevention officers to know what exactly is happening, where is it happening, when's it happening, who's involved. These are the things that we've tried and been successful at. These are the things that we've tried and have not been successful. That really helps us, because the first thing we're going to say is, hey, have you tried this, that, tried this? And when we get down to the bottom list, we'll go, okay, maybe the enforcement piece or that improved presence is the next step. So now we're moving a lot more quickly. So that's one of the things that I'd suggest.
Clint?
Some great suggestions. So the only thing I would add is something that Colin had said earlier in an earlier question. Don't accept it. Don't accept the status quo. That's how societies fall apart. So whether it's binding together, whether it's knowing your neighbor, whether it's joining forces with the BIA, joining SOS, whatever it is we can all set a much higher standard, and the collective wisdom using science will get us there.
Great. Thank you. So we'll switch gears. We've got a question from the audience. Can you share a specific example of something you have done that has been successful to eliminate or reduce a specific crime in a location that has been problematic? Who would like to take that?
I can give you with my London drugs hat on, and I'll give you two extremes because there's always crime is such a wide variety. So I'll give you a human example and I'll give you a physical security example. So from a human example, we are not concerned about calling Colin to say someone stole a candy bar or someone stole that. It's problematic, but that's not the focus. But our loss prevention officers look to see what is being stolen. Is it going to a marketplace? So a classic example is in one of our Vancouver stores. This loss prevention officer would notice the same person stealing what we would call an aid to daily living. They were stealing socks and polysporin. They're not selling that on marketplace. So they chatted with the person, said, look, we don't want to arrest you. What's going on here? And he says, I've got a really bad foot infection and I'm living on the street. And he said, look, tell you what, let's make a deal. Every time you run out of that, you come in and see us. We'll give that to you. And in return, don't steal from us, and put the word on the street that that's not okay, that's not what we're concerned about. That same person turned around and would start to say, that person's a big problem. That's an organized retail crime person. And so they became part of helping us because we helped them. And it's the old covenant we have with the community, right? If we take care of each other, they'll take care of us. On the other extreme, just over in this store over here, we had a big problem with people coming in to where we have our compactors and waste disposal, defecation, starting fires, living because it's covered. So we had to spend about $25,000 to put up a fence. The issue was it was a staff safety perception issue and a real concern that one day one of the garbage trucks was going to back up and someone had fallen asleep or had succumbed to their drugs underneath the compactor bin and they'd be killed. So we felt we had a responsibility to protect our staff, protect the people that were disadvantaged having to live under there, and certainly create a much better condition for the mall. So we had to spend that money. So there's two extremes of something we've done.
Thank you. Love the compassion there too. Colin?
Yeah, it's kind of on the retail theft stream that we've been talking about a little bit. We have a project in Abbotsford called Project Lighthouse. And basically the underlying premise behind Project Lighthouse is our staff identified the top 10 retail theft locations. And we knew that there was a massive underreporting problem on retail theft for a whole bunch of reasons. We've already talked about some of those things. And so our staff reached out to those top 10 stores, started having a conversation about how can we streamline reporting. What they found was that, in some cases, it wasn't really clear what information should be reported to us, how that should be communicated. For the stores that had loss prevention officers, what are the really key things that we need from a paperwork perspective to process charges quickly, all those types of things. I could go on, but the end result has been, and this is where the stats can lie to us, so by all indications, the retail theft has gone down in these 10 different locations, but this reporting has gone up by 75%. So when you look, so that's the disconnect. And the numbers went up because we had this massive underreporting, but we've had, by all accounts, a net positive impact with this project. So it does show what happens when we can cooperate, but they are, these types of projects are resource-intensive projects and not something that we can do, across the entire city all at once. But if we can get ahead of some of these crime problems and there is a consequence for action, because if you keep going in and you keep stealing from stores and there's no consequence, what do you think is going to keep happening? So we need to disrupt that.
Jane?
Yes, well, I'll answer this from the perspective of a BIA, because it is slightly different from the other folks on the panel. Granville Street has a perception problem, and it has a perception problem for a reason. There's no doubt about that. But a couple of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we came together and we said, what can we do about the perception of safety on this street? And we decided that we would hold an event that is now called the Granville Block Party. And we weren't sure if anybody would come those first couple of years. And now that event brings in about 42,000 people over 2 days. It generates about $1 million in economic impact for local businesses. And when we survey people, every single person said they felt safe and they felt better about the street than they did before the event. So safety and vibrancy go hand in hand, and we know that when we give people reasons to come downtown, they do, and I can only speak from my own experience, it's always positive. We have yet to have a negative experience, knock on metal.
Thanks. Kelly, anything to add there?
One of the groups I do a lot of work with is probably, the CMLC, which is the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, which for those of you, maybe some of you from Calgary, but CMLC has done some incredible space activation. So where you have an empty lot, they'll lay down some asphalt, put in some hoops, just leave a bag full of basketballs and these sort of things. And it's been incredibly successful. They built a pickleball court because it's just, but the only thing they have is the complaints from the noise. So activating space, having events, having festivals, opening up your spaces to community groups. Space activation, again, that's part of stewardship, and it allows people to take back their communities and include the people that might be in the, they might want to hang out too.
Without a doubt. You have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, look at that. We have 2 seconds left. Time flies when you have an awesome panel. I want to thank each of the panelists today. It's been awesome, and the cross section I think really helped contribute to our conversation, and hopefully everybody received a few tips and ideas to keep things rolling forward in our own businesses and communities. And I want to thank each one of you for coming today. So thank you.